in this week's Two Wheels Better, with the show season starting to get into full swing, a look back at a couple of last year's top events. But first, it's Wayne's big day. Mention scooters, and many people think of the mod, dressed in his parka, on his Lambretta or his Vespa with mirrors all over the place. Some people think of these, the Yamaha Townmate or Honda C50s, 70s and 90s with the old plastic leg shields. And indeed you can still buy one of these brand new. But they don't have to look like this anymore. The modern scooter is the answer to all sorts of problems in the city, and it's come a long way.
Yeah, and it's true, isn't it? There's some very, very strange looking scooters. In fact, I think they've flown in from another planet because there's some weird space age stuff. But they are very, very simple to use, very simple to ride, and very cost effective as well. You out there could use one. If you're a car driver and you've been driving a few years, you don't even have to bother with anything. You stick an L plate on it, you jump on a 50cc version and off you go. In fact, they're so simple to use, they've even allowed me to go on one, and I'm going to have a dabble on one of these, this Yamaha beastie here. Okay, here we go, me on a road test. What an honour. For the non-motorcyclist who may be watching the programme, this is the nearest you'll get to riding a push bike, but without the pedal. You simply turn the key, press the start button, turn the throttle, and away we go. Beats pedalling, doesn't it? The only gear you're likely to need is of course a crash helmet, a pair of gloves and maybe a waterproof oversuit for the odd wet occasion. And when you need to park up in the town or the city, no need to look hard for the space as you would a car, just stick it anywhere, within reason of course. Put a lock on it if you've got one with you, and pay no way. You can go to the shops on these things and you can park right outside the door. Lazy people like me love this. Get your goodies, large or small, and on this Yamaha AirX, all you have to do is lift up the seat and reveal a huge storage area, which is big enough to store your helmet so you don't have to carry it everywhere with you. Petrol, well that's what these things run on, but this baby seemed to go forever without needing any. Some machines will do over 100 miles to the gallon. Unleaded? Yes, but I don't need any. The petrol gauge on the dashboard says so. Off we go again. Yes, we are at a race course, but I can assure you I have not been racing on this machine because it doesn't race. It does the job beautifully, but it just does not go very fast at all. But it is a city machine. It's a little scooter that goes around the city, and for that purpose I definitely got from A to B in the city centre quicker than any form of fancy four-wheel machine. But on the open road, on the dual carriageway, 30 miles an hour. Well, that's the idea. It's one of the many, many mopeds that are available to you to go to the shops, on to the office, or whatever you're going to use it for in the city centre. Now, this is one of the brand new Yamaha ones that's been introduced this year, and I've got to say that there are probably more scooter type motorcycles, certainly of this style, that are available than any of the big things. There's absolutely hundreds of them, and hundreds of different makes from Italy, wherever. Now, this is a Japanese version, and it happens to be stylish, sleek, suave, debonair, and everything else. You can buy these little scooter devices second-hand, 500 or 600 quid, and you can buy these fancy ones from anything from, say, 1,500, 1,600 pounds. Anyway, the weather's held off so far, but it does look like it's going to change. I really don't fancy getting wet, so I'm going to take the machine back.
know, I sought him out a ride on a scooter and he bloody disappears. And, oh, nice to see you again. Thanks for coming back.
Shut up morning, will you? I've been enjoying myself on my little scooter and I've enjoyed every little bit of it.
Good, I'm very pleased for you, Wayne.
Will you hold on to them?
Yeah.
I'll get another one.
Oh, yeah. Well, no one else take this.
Well, spring has sprung, and perhaps you're thinking of a new bike, but not everyone can afford a new bike, so we thought we'd take a look at the second-hand market. Starting with this example, 1992 ZZR 1100, plenty of them about, good reputation and a solid bike. It happens to be mine, but don't let that sort of confuse you for the time being. Introduced in 1990, it's been around right up until the current time. It's now on the D models. This happens to be a C3. They brought the D model in late 92. That had a new perimeter frame, bigger wheels, slightly bigger brakes, but basically it was the same machine. And they also tidied up the fairing just inside there on the console. But basically the same bike as we've got here. So what do you get with the ZZR? You get this very effective fairing which covers me up nicely, but I can pop out of it. And down the front end here you can see it's a very aerodynamic job, very distinctive of ZZRs. The indicators are faired in and give you some downforce to keep the front end down at high speed. Same goes for the mudguard, it's even got a little spoiler at the back. This screen, you might have noticed, this tinted one, is a flip-up aftermarket accessory I bought because the original one finished round about there, and even though it was fine for general purpose use, it did end up directing a hell of a wind blast at my upper body and also my helmet, and so I thought I'd give that up and go for this, and this has been absolutely fantastic. Well, another distinctive feature is the perimeter frame. Kawasaki were one of the first to use this big beam frame. It's an aluminium section frame. These are box section alloy, welded to giant forgings at the bottom there and at the top for the steering head. Keeping them this wide, not only do they surround the engine and keep the top tubes low, but it also allows the fuel tank to actually sit way down inside the frame, so the bulk of the fuel is carried down there just above the gearbox. This is very shallow inside because the airbox is right up under there. If ever there was a truly Gran Turismo motorcycle, the Big Z would be the bike to beat. You want speed? No worries. This is dialer speed biking at its most effortless. Just open wide and go. 175 miles an hour is real, not hype, but it's not what it does, it's the way that it does it. The 1052cc motor has got more torque than Danny Baker, great watches of this stuff, and the delivery is rapid. It's 7,000 revs and the afterburners light up. You hear a wondrous induction roar and you're rocketed into the 12,000 red zone in nanoseconds. 65 comes up in first and a license losing 110 in second. And so it goes, if you're in a hurry. But it's not all speed and power. This is a manageable package and you're in control. In fact, all the controls are light with an excellent clutch and gearbox. Steering is a bit on the heavy side at town speeds, but soon lightens up on the open road. Most of all, of course, Kawasaki's are famed for their engines, especially the ZZR. It's a pretty standard mill by today's standards. It's a 1052cc, double overhead cam, 16 valve and all the rest of it water cooled. One thing to look for on this though, the earlier models such as this one were actually restricted to a meagre 125 brake horsepower, as though that wasn't enough for anyone. They're now de-restricted and they'll churn out 140. Now the way the Kawasaki did this was quite simple. On the carburettor tops, they simply put a flatter top on the carburettor, and so that the throttle slide couldn't move as far as it does do on a de-restricted one. And so you only had a sort of a 3/4 throttle, and still at a 3/4 throttle it'll do 170 miles an hour. But what to look for is this little carb top. If it's got flat top black caps on, that means it's de-restricted. If it's got shallow black ones on with a little pimple on the top of it, that means it's still a restricted model. But I wouldn't worry too much, it's plenty for you. You're very well served for creature comforts on the ZZR as well. The mirrors are excellent. You see far more than your elbows, which is very useful, and I'm sure you know what I mean there. It's got a very, very comfortable seat. There's plenty of room on this for 2 people, and if you're solo, you've got a chance to move around. Up the front end, you've got fully adjustable brake and clutch levers. You can adjust them for span. If you've got big mitts like me, there's no problem. Or if you've got a bit, let's just say, restricted, still no problem. You can pull the levers in dead easy. You've got flashing fuel lights. The D model had a fuel gauge, but this one's got flashing fuel lights, which some people criticise, but they're all right, they work. Come on a little bit early, but they work okay. You've got 2 trip counters on it, which I find really useful. The one I tend to set for the fuel consumption, the other one I just leave for total journey time, so that'll just run happily up to sort of 2,500, 3,000 miles or whatever you want, and it's a very useful feature. Not all bikes have got that. The later D model has actually got a little clock set into the rev counter, but what I do is actually I bought a little accessory from a car accessory shop, and I just clip a small clock onto the headstock, and it's just the job on those very long journeys, and you want to keep an eye on just how things are going. Road holding is good with very compliant suspension soaking up the bumps, but there's no getting away from the fact that at 228 kilos this is a big bike, and in the handling stakes flickability is not a strong point. Main road sweepers are fine, but sharp left rights with changes of camber give you a good workout. Brakes are well up to the job with twin 300mm semi-floaters at the front and a single at the rear. The riding position for me is spot on. The Z is one of those bikes that felt right from the word go, and now 600 miles in a day is no problem at all. Expect a steady 43 to 46 miles per gallon, which will give you a range of around 220 miles. That is if you ignore the flashing low fuel warning lights that come on when you've still got 60 miles to go. Still, they keep you company on a dark night. So there we have it. Power, performance, comfort, reliability and looks. Buy a used one like this for around £4 grand. Less than half the price, but all the poke of a new one.
After the break, some of last year's top shows. Now, take several crates of beer, some dirty brown trench coats, a double-decker bus, and some works-prepared Honda C90s, and what have you got? Well, it's a recipe for absolute chaos. It can only mean the Purple Helmets. And in next week's Two Wheels Better, Jeff Stone is out auto-jumbling.